Hello and welcome back to the Lazy Money Machine podcast. Graham Brown and Erik Ten and we talk about everything building passive income, goals, achievement, and so on. Today we're going to talk about goals. There's an article in Inc. magazine which leads with the title, "There are 100 days left in 2017. Have you achieved your goals yet?" And then it goes on to talk about how you can achieve your goals. And it's pretty systematic. Curious to know how people actually go about achieving their goals, because it's a very personal thing. Erik, what are you? Are you sort of a regimented goal setter and achiever, or do you do things a little bit differently?
Not really. The key trigger for me is always if I feel lost and unclear, I go and dive into some sort of a goal setting process. And I think the thing that helps me most, is to just look 3 months ahead. Planning for a very long period in one go, for me, doesn't really work. So if I feel like I'm a bit lost and I'm not spending my time effectively on achieving something, then I go back and say, okay, let me go and put a piece of paper on the wall and plan a couple of months ahead on the different activities that I do, and put some sticky notes on, okay, this is what I'm going to do next month, this is what I'm going to do in December to go towards where I want to go in my business.
Yeah, there's a sort of school of thought, isn't it, that you should really structure that in down to the, on a daily basis, really detailed with numbers and so on. I kind of feel that sets you up for failure, doesn't it? That ultimately those systems, they may look good, they may work for weeks, but what tends to happen is they break down, don't they? Because the goals become meaningless and you're doing them for all the wrong reasons.
Yes. Yeah, and I think what is important for me too is that if I can't get excited about something, they end up on a to-do list and get rolled over from one week to the other, right? So
yeah,
the goal setting needs to be also, for me at least, something that I can get excited about. If the things that I'm working on don't excite me, then I can schedule as much activities and as much goal setting for that particular job. But if it won't happen, I know myself. I'm lazy, right? We're lazy. So if I get into my lazy mode, the stuff that doesn't excite me, although it's planned and it's scheduled, it just won't happen.
I found this, I don't know about you, Erik, personally, but, I think we're kind of going in this direction. We have goals in our head, right? But, where we actually put them down on paper and, make them very structured like this article suggests, I think that doesn't work. What tends to work for me is I have a picture of what I want to achieve, like a lifestyle. And that lifestyle could be, okay, I want to live in this villa. I want this villa to have a pool. I want it to be in a country which is warm. I want to be by the sea. I want to have this lifestyle with my family, etc., right? And I picture that visually. And yes. I sort of live out that goal in my head and talk about it with my family. That's really powerful for me. That works because somehow my body takes me to that. Do you do that for yourself? I mean, are you sort of a visualizer in that sense? Because, there's a lot of evidence that this works in sport, at least. So I don't know if it works for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I do that, but I do it irregularly, I think. And for me, that's more, there are years that I do it and there are years that I don't. So this big picture visualization of where I want to go, that does happen to me, and I've also done it together with a coach, which has been very effective for me, whereby you make sort of this visualization of 5-10 years into the future. And what I found about that is that if I do it every once in a while, and it's on a in a couple of years interval, I do the exercise and I fill in like the picture of, okay, where am I going to be 10 years from now, 5 years from now? It sort of sticks in my head even though I don't look at it. And it's sort of an undercurrent in everything that I do. And if I go back to those things, and I usually only go back to them after a while, and I look at what I've written down, usually a lot of these things that I've written down in that process I've realized those. But I don't, check that off every day, every month to see am I still on the path of my 10-year goals. I don't do that.
Well, maybe that's all that it's needed, right? It's just to have it. Maybe isn't a regular thing, but to be conscious of it and to do it. Set these visualizations of what you want to achieve, and everything else, all your goals head towards that. You focus on the activities that take you there, right? Even if you're not thinking about that villa or that lifestyle, right? It's in your head. It's in your subconscious. You say undercurrent. I think your brain remembers this stuff and, takes you in that direction, right? And that's probably a lot more powerful than saying, right, okay, in the next 3 months I want to do this, because maybe that part of the goal setting is really just fulfilling that visualization, if you like.
Yeah, I've got a question for you. You're an extreme sportsman. You do Ironmans.
Yep.
Isn't it so that if you want to be able to do that, and an Ironman for people listening, that's a really big achievement. It's a big run, a big swim, and a big bike ride. If you want to get to that, don't you have to have something whereby you're like a military style type of training to get to that point? Don't you need a lot of detail then?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think you need both. I mean, you do need that detailed training. Like I'm going to do 25 hours of training this week and I'm going to focus on this, this, and this, because, the activity is quite repetitive. And in that case, you can measure it. It's very different from starting a business, isn't it? Because I know if I'm going to swim and a bike and a run, if I go and run 10K, I know exactly what a run of 10K is and I'm going to do it in so many minutes, right? Mm-hmm. But starting a business is very different. But you have to have that really regimented breakdown. But at the same time, the visualization is really important as well. I'm glad you brought it up, because I remember now before I did my first Ironman race, I visualized it. I would actually visualize, arriving at, the seashore at 6 a.m, standing there with all the other people in the wetsuit, with the sun rising, ready to go into the cold water. And I would imagine, I'd visualize all that, the whole 12-hour race. I'd visualize every part of it and walk through it. Because I think if you do that, your brain now has already lived it and experienced it, and it was okay. So when it actually happens, it's not like, whoa, what's happening?
Yeah.
So I kind of think, I don't know, I mean, if you visualize yourself, does it, I don't know what the reason is, but does it sort of tell your brain that it's okay when this happens because this is what you want, rather than, don't panic?
Yeah, sure. I just remembered something else. I mean, it's interesting how if we start a topic, all of a sudden we realize that there's many aspects to this. And one aspect for me is also sometimes also I use this visualization in some sort of a meditation practice, right? Whereby I take these 3 things that I want to achieve in life, and I visualize myself being there, having done it, talking on stage, speaking, writing a book. These things have all been in that exercise. And that really helps as well, because like you said, you give yourself permission to achieve it, I guess, right? You visualize yourself actually having been there or already are there, which is really powerful, I think.
That's a really interesting point you made, Erik, about give yourself permission to achieve it. I think when we think about that, let's break that down, how powerful that is, because I think what happens is when we set these goals for ourselves and they don't work out, or we have this sort of self-destructive behavior, or things fail, or, it just becomes frustrating trying to get there. Maybe, that vision that you set for yourself and what you really want on the goals are different. And maybe there's some sort of internal conflict, isn't it? Like some people, we hear about all these stories, people who are really successful and then they sort of throw everything away because it isn't what they wanted, right? Mm-hmm. So that whole thing about give yourself permission to achieve it, it's kind of like rehearsing that, isn't it? And is this really what I want? Like those 3 things that you visualize. Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's that you're going through that process in your brain. What kind of things would you actually put in it? Would you actually, would it say, I want to earn, $1 million a year, or I want to be happy? I mean, how specific are you when you do that?
It's actually not money related, I come to realize. So usually it's maybe in another episode we'll break this down. I have this Tony Robbins style exercise routine that I sometimes do in the morning, which is part of this is this visualization. And usually I take the 3 most important things that are at this point happening in my life, which will effectuate in a future time. So for instance, it could be I'm visualizing the next big trip I'm going to do with my family. When I left on my 6-month trip to the US, this was a big one in my visualization. So what am I going to achieve there? What am I going to see? What am I going to experience when I do this? And how is it going to feel? The other thing could be like for my UK property business, I've set a goal there with my partner that we want to get to 200 rental units over there. And the number has a financial basis why we want to get there, but it's also a visualization of, okay, we're not going to give up at this point where we're not there yet. We're still building the portfolio. But visualizing, having 200 tenants, having 200 rooms rented, having people happily living in that, it's that specific. Even if I do it, so the people that I meet they're nice tenants. They are happy with living there. We provide good accommodation. It could be for health and fitness, for instance. It could be me visualizing, bench pressing 60 kilos or 70 kilos, right? It's that specific, and it's like you take something that you can portray or can visualize as, okay, it's okay if I get to that point. It's okay if I become stronger. It's okay if I become successful or happy. Or it's really powerful putting yourself in the state where you've already achieved it mentally, and then bring it back to today. It's motivating, but it's also, it's forgiving. It's allowing you to go there.
Yeah. Okay. So point being that visualization is a powerful way of achieving your goals, isn't it? Often more powerful than going through these kind of structured bottom-up processes, right, which we see a lot in these articles. And also, it's sort of, like you said, it rehearses the state, it tests whether actually it's something that you really want. I always remember there's somebody I knew that from my business circles who always say that his goal was to have 56 million pound, so about, I don't know, $80 million in his bank account. That was his goal. And you'd ask him, why? What's the meaning of this, right? And he said, I want that because this is the amount of money that this entrepreneur had. And, he'd basically benchmarked himself against that. And I think it's really important, isn't it? Is that you set goals which are meaningful to you and are not goals for other people. And in this case, this guy is setting a goal which had no meaning, really. Mm-hmm. It's just so he could be accepted by other people. He could be like this other entrepreneur. And as far as I know, 20 years later, he still hasn't achieved that goal. So, those goals have to be meaningful. And that sort of visualization process is a great way of rehearsing it. So we've been talking about 100 days left in 2017 and achieving your goals. This is the Lazy Money Machine podcast. Erik ten Hammer and Graham Brown.